to our April event in our Sinews in the Cypress guest speaker series. Before we start, I just want to quickly explain about the name Sinews in the Cypress. Sinews in the Cypress speaks to the deep ties that us Louisianans have to our environment, and more specifically, the wetlands. The bald cypress is the state tree of Louisiana, a staple of the most prevalent ecosystem in our state. It is one of the most ubiquitous and broadcasted species found throughout all of Louisiana. In the environmental world, the tree is an ambassador for the wetlands and Louisiana. The bald cypress is also extremely resilient, much like the population of Louisiana, and it is actually resistant to decay, which has led it to being called the wood eternal. The term sinews has two connected yet different meanings. First, it is used to describe a tough, fibrous piece of tissue uniting tissue to bone or bone to bone. The other definition for a sinew is the part of a structure or system that gives it strength and binds it together. The term sinew gives a humanistic vision to the project, as well as a show of strength and resilience that the people, as well as the Louisiana environment, display. Lastly, when the bald cypress grows in the swamps, it develops a unique texture that can be described as sinewy, resembling tendons in a person. Throughout the year, we're going to be trying to hold these guest speaker events. We'll be bringing experts from across the environmental and environmental justice field to host discussions. We plan on discussing everything from environmental racism to Black, Indigenous, and people of color's connection to water and the environment, to carbon emission reduction strategies for our city. We plan on keeping the attendance caps for these events at around 15 to 20 people, to create a more intimate atmosphere and foster an environment for open discussion. For the speaker series, we're going to be using the following format. We will initially turn it over to our guest speaker who will give their brief presentation. We're going to follow that by the VAYLA representative, which is going to be me, asking some questions to the presenter. We will then open up the floor for questions from the audience. If you don't feel comfortable asking the question, you can just put it in the chat box, and either I or Twee will read them out loud for our speaker to answer. I'm very excited to introduce our speaker for this event, Khai Nguyen. He is the program manager at VEGGI Farmers Cooperative and a project manager at MQVN Community Development Corporation. Khai has been a leader in the New Orleans East community for the last 10 or so years, has used his expertise in urban farming and green infrastructure to help improve the lives of people in his community. Today, he'll be discussing a range of topics from sustainability to community organizing to green infrastructure, with a focus on how these things affect our community here in New Orleans. Without further ado, I'm going to pass it on to Khai.
Yeah, hey, just want to say, first of all, I'm definitely not an expert in urban farming. So, I mean, I just let our farmers do that. But basically, yeah, thanks for having me. Like Zach was saying, my name is Khai. I've been working with MQVN, CDC, and VEGGI for pretty much about 10 years now. I guess just a little background on myself. I grew up in New Orleans East, in Village l'Est, where there's a large Vietnamese population. If you know about Village l'Est, you know about VAYLA, you probably know about the community. And yeah, I mean, I think growing up there, I was really lucky to kind of like grow up in a Vietnamese community, but also grow up in New Orleans. I always like tell people, you know, I feel like very fortunate to be able to have these two like cultural backgrounds or influences, you know, mainly because of the food, you know, options that I have with both. So I love Vietnamese food. I love like, you know, New Orleans food. But I'm sure like Zach's going to go into a little bit further, but just a little bit background of like how I started. So with MQVN, CDC, and VEGGI and working in the community, basically after Hurricane Katrina, I was in college at the time. But in the community, there was a lot of people doing great work, doing redevelopment work. VAYLA was started then, MQVN, CDC started then. There are a few other organizations that were starting then, and there was a lot of community organizing by young people, community leaders, all that. One, to do like redevelopment, community-based redevelopment, and also to kind of fight an environmental justice battle with the city and their decision to put a debris landfill near the community. So there's so much great work being done by like young folks in New Orleans, in the Vietnamese community, but I wasn't as like involved in that, and so like after the BP oil spill, I decided, like I need to. If the BP oil spill affected our community a lot, and so I decided I need to do something, since I didn't really do as much, or I wasn't as involved with the post Katrina stuff. I was like, I need to get involved in the response to the oil spill. So that's how I got involved with the organization, the community development work there, mainly starting as a volunteer and then going from there. But yeah, I mean, I don't know if you want me to like how much you want me to get into it before your question, your questioning, but yeah, I can stop there, or
you can go a little bit more into it if
okay.
you have some more stuff to say.
Yeah. I mean, so maybe a lot of you guys know me from VEGGI. So VEGGI was started basically as a response to the BP oil spill. I wanted to clarify one of the things. I do a lot of these, and I'm not counting this as much, but I do a lot of like media and stuff like that, requests, and I respond to a lot of those requests, and like they always want to say like co-founder or whatever, but like, and I know this was listed as the on the social media stuff, and like that is my fault to not clarify, but like I wanted to clarify that, like it wasn't like I was involved at the beginning, but like I would say like it was a total team thing, like MQVN CDC really, the leadership, and also my colleagues there. We were trying to find a way to do a workforce development project, because a lot of people had lost their jobs because of the oil spill. A lot of people in the Vietnamese community were involved in the fishing industry, and so like basically overnight, they lost their livelihoods. And so like after Katrina, there was a lot of community meetings, community focus groups, and one of the things that the community really wanted to work on or prioritize was an urban farm. Unfortunately, there were some issues with land use, land ownership, and also the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers and jurisdictional wetlands, that kind of stuff. The urban farming project never really took off the ground from Katrina, but like after the oil spill, we kind of like wanted to revisit that because we knew a lot of people in our community were interested in urban farming. And so like, we felt like that was the avenue we wanted to take in terms of the workforce development project. So we got about 15 community members together initially. Most of them were involved in the fishing industry, and we built some greenhouses and aquaponic systems, and just basically started hustling their produce to restaurants in the city. So like to help them earn income. And so it was a way for us to help them earn supplemental income while they were basically, out of work because of the oil spill. And then a couple of years later, we were able to get some rent or lease some land from a community member to build up a pretty small community farm, which is still operating today. And over the years, we've just been going through like restaurants, farmers markets. Now we really, we have a really nice CSA program as well, but that's kind of the basics of it. We try to do things as naturally as possible. Like our farmers do a lot of things by hand. If you follow our Instagram, I think Maddie's on the call on the Zoom as well. She's handles our Instagram, and she does a really great job showcasing our farmers and our operations. So, and also, I don't really run the day-to-day stuff anymore. It's been a few years since I've done that. Like Tom who if you go to the farmers markets and see him around town, like he's the one that really does the day-to-day stuff. So like they've been doing a really great job. So I just want to give them a shout out as well. But yeah, so that's where we're at now, you know, with VEGGI. And of course, like there's a lot of other projects that we're working on as well. And we just want to make things, we just want to do things as I know this is like an environmentally focused talk here, but yeah, we wanted to make things as natural and environmentally friendly and sustainable as possible. So yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you so much for that background, Khai. I was just wondering, I know you sort of touched upon it there, but I was, what exactly like attracted you to doing the work that you've done so far with VEGGI Co-op, and why exactly do you think like incorporating sustainability was so important in that?
Well, so I feel like what attracted me to doing the work and stuff like that was I think I mentioned I grew up in the community in New Orleans East with a lot of, you know, the Vietnamese community, and so like when the BP oil spill happened, even when Katrina happened, like, you know, there's the whole episode about how, you know, the Vietnamese community was coming back in large numbers, and like, you know, I took a lot of pride in that. You know, my family, you know, and the community altogether, like everyone was helping each other out rebuild following Katrina. And then like when the oil spill happened, like, you know, there's another need for people to help each other out. And I felt like, hey, you know, I can at least volunteer to like translate, help people like fill out like oil spill compensation forms or whatever. So that's how I started. And the other thing is like I'm familiar with a lot of people. Like it's really like satisfying throughout the years to know that like the programs that I work on are helping people that basically like I grew up or like helped, you know, raise me in a way. So yeah, I mean, I think that definitely like that definitely attracted me to like do the work that I do. As far as sustainability, like, I mean, there's several, and we live in Louisiana. We live in kind of one of the most at risk areas in the world to climate change, sea level rise, coastal erosion, land subsidence. You know, in New Orleans East, in the Village Les area. I don't know if many of you guys have been there, but you can see like people's houses. They're like so high. They're on like on a foundation, and then like by the time it goes to the street, it's so much lower than where the house is. And that's just over the years, like subsidence. And yeah, and there's I think living in. But another thing is like we also like we live in New Orleans, and we think that we're like a little far from the coast, but like that's not the case. If you have any kind of like if you go up anywhere, either on a plane or even like just driving to Chalmette or whatever from New Orleans East, you'll see like how much water is around us. And so like even New Orleans itself, like we're pretty at risk for all these environmental issues. But yeah, so sustainability is, of course, like plays a huge role. Like we want to make sure that you know, where we live is still there when future generations or in 50 years or so. But also it's like not just like environmental sustainability. There's like cultural sustainability. There's, you know, food. There's preserving like vanishing food ways. Financial sustainability, all of that. So we try to make sure that all those things we can try to make sure it keeps going and is available for a long time. So
awesome. Yeah, I was wondering, maybe it's just me, but I was wondering maybe if you could go into maybe some details or ways that like VEGGI Co-op, what y'all are doing to make it sustainable and such.
Yeah, so I think I just want to, I guess, go back in that, like, a lot of the people that are in our community, and when they were in Vietnam, well, especially a lot of the elders, when they were in Vietnam, they were either mostly fishing or farming already. So like the first couple hundred people that resettled in New Orleans East from Vietnam when they came as refugees in 1975 were mostly from a few different villages and small towns of Vietnam that mostly were fishing towns, fishing villages. And so like those are the folks that came to the US, or came to New Orleans when they were invited. I mean, when they were resettled down here. And so a lot of them went into fishing. A lot of them just started growing food in whatever space was available. And, you know, so and when you're doing that stuff, when you're growing food, when you're fishing, you know, there's, they understand that they need to work with the land. They need to work with the water. They can't just, you know, you can't just catch anything whatever you can and like all year round, and you can't like abuse the land. You have to work with it. And so like for us, we make sure we work with the land. Our farmers, like I said at the beginning, I'm not a farming expert at all, but I trust our farmers to know, you know, to grow sustainably, grow as naturally as possible. And then also another issue that happens is that with a lot of farming, there's a lot of nutrient runoff, and so that kind of thing is like what we've been trying to do more with doing repairing buffers and things like that to kind of like educate people in terms of like how to mitigate that as well. But yeah, just like making sure that we don't overuse the land and yeah, just being able to do what we can for a long time.
Gotcha. Yeah, I think that was great. I love how where you went with that answer. That was awesome. So I was also just wanted to ask some questions, maybe more in regards to just like New Orleans East. So we know that that New Orleans East faces a variety of environmental justice issues. I was wondering, what issues do you think should be like garnering more attention than it has, and how do you think these issues should be approached? It could be like in terms of sustainability, or if there's some type of issues, environmental racism, or like food security, whatever you want to touch upon.
So yeah, I think the community, there's been a lot of I think there's several answers to that, I guess, or several things I think about when you ask that question. I think I go back to the whole like landfill issue back in aftermath of Katrina. Like, you know, that's the landfill still kind of may affect our community waterways because it's in close proximity, and we want to make sure that our waterways are safe, especially since a lot of people use the canals to grow food. Another thing is I wasn't as involved in it as folks at VAYLA, folks from the church, but the energy gas plant was a big deal. And unfortunately, I don't know, you know, doesn't look like very favorable for the community going forward with that. But another thing that I like I mentioned before was just like in general, the risk of flooding and subsidence and things like that going forward. I think that a lot of people don't realize how close or how at risk. Yeah, I mean, New Orleans, we're surrounded by flood walls and things like that, but I think there are some models for sure that within 50 years, like a lot of the area that we're farming on a lot of the areas in our community will be underwater without substantial projects. And so like I personally, and our organization, we've been working with other groups to kind of advocate for communities and coastal projects that would benefit the communities, and also making sure that our communities' voices will be heard in any future projects or anything like that. But my main thing is like I do want to be more knowledgeable and more up to date on like some of the projects that would affect New Orleans East and our community. And so, and then to be able to like provide that information to our community members, and then get our community members' input and provide that to, you know, like whatever agencies are involved. So.
Yeah, I think you brought up a great point, just like representation, being able to have the issues that are actually affecting people be brought to their representatives. I'm looking at the chat and I see that Malcolm has a question. So I'm gonna pass it to Malcolm. You can unmute yourself and you can go ask Khai your question.
I was typing it out because I was trying to like get my thoughts together.
I thought you were just saying you were ready. You had a question.
Yeah, I hit enter way too early. I do that all the time. I guess my question is like, usually when I'm thinking about like environmental issues, my brain immediately goes to like innovation, you know, like new technologies or new ways to do things, as opposed to like all these harmful ways that we get our energy and our food now. So I was interested if you've learned anything from working with a farmer and fishing community that's like ways that we can innovate without necessarily like washing away or like in a culturally sustainable way, you know, without being like you have to change how you do everything and assimilate to like this new standard. How can we promote like innovation while also maintaining like the culture, you know?
Yeah. Well, I think I can answer that in a few ways. One is also like our farmers are pretty they're pretty stubborn. We try to introduce drip line system for them, but like they're just gonna water by hand. But I think in general, like if you're like a small scale farmer or you do like small scale farming, like you're already being innovative in a way. Like you're not like the biggest polluter in the world is probably at least it's like I think cattle farming or ranching or whatever. You know, like there's this huge industrialized food systems in the U.S. especially is like that's driving most of the environmental damage. I feel like, or I mean, I could be wrong, but like that's one of the biggest for sure.
It is, yeah.
So I feel like if you're growing food on a small scale level, if you're doing urban farming, if you're like, you know, having a neighborhood, that in itself is already innovative to me. And I just want to see more of that. Like our when we started VEGGI, it wasn't like farming wasn't like a you know, a new or different thing for these community members. Like they had already been growing food in their backyards. They had been already growing food along like, you know, whatever land they could find. And so obviously, yeah, there's always ways to make it more environmentally friendly or sustainable. And like I think I mentioned earlier, we realized, you know, like nutrient runoff is a big issue, and like that's mainly from like the huge, especially in Louisiana, you know, with the huge, the large scale like industrial farming upriver from the Mississippi. You know, we have dead zones in the Gulf because of that, and you know, us at the bottom of the at the end of the Mississippi, we kind of get like kind of all of the chemicals and things like that come from those farms. And so like we worked on educating folks about like, you know, hey, we can do these like riparian buffers or whatever to kind of like capture some of these nutrients before they go into the bodies of water and things like that. So that's one thing. But yeah, I think in general, like if you're doing something on a small scale, like if you're educating folks, like, hey, instead of going to buying all your groceries at like, you know, a grocery store that's importing all this stuff, you know, go to your local farmers markets and getting stuff from people that are growing like on a very small scale, growing close to here. There's no need for like all these different systems, like transportation systems and all that stuff that add to environmental, have like a bigger environment impact. So I don't know if that like, you know, totally answers your question, but yeah, that's how I feel.
Yeah, it's almost like in, like you mentioned, like mass production of like food is one of the primary I guess benefactors to climate change and such like that. Innovation is almost like going back to cultural roots, you know.
Yeah.
And doing it more on a small scale.
For sure.
Very interesting. Thank you.
I mean, the thing is, like, I also would love to actually to hear about more, actually, besides that, like other innovative practices people are doing, and like I feel like, you know, maybe Tom or Maddie would be a little bit more be able to better answer this question. But like, there's a, you know, really awesome network and interconnectivity of small farmers, urban farmers in New Orleans and in the region. And so like, I think like I think there is a lot of like sharing and mutual like knowledge being passed along there. And so I feel like maybe there's innovation. I'm sure there's innovation being done there, and like that's something that I can maybe like we can find out a little bit more. But yeah, I do think that like just in general, like getting away from like the really I mean, I say fast food, but I mean like industrialized food, you know, go be more involved in like the slow food process. I think it's makes a big deal.
Yeah, thank you so much for that question, Malcolm. I know we're sort of touching upon like innovation, and we were also sort of talking about how here in New Orleans, Kai's been saying how we're so close to water, and that we, as a city, we really need to live with water. And I know me and Khai, when we talked earlier, we had sort of talked about green infrastructure as maybe a possibility moving forward. I know, Khai, you've been doing some work in that field. I was wondering, moving forward, especially for New Orleans East, what type of like green infrastructure you feel would have the largest impact on helping to abate environmental issues in our community, and what exactly you've been doing with green infrastructure recently.
Yeah, so I think there's a couple of things that come to mind when we think about living in New Orleans, right? We have to live with water, and we got to make sure that you know, New Orleans is below sea level, so there's a lot of things that we have to deal with. We have to deal with like constant flooding just from you know, a 2-hour rainstorm. So, but there are a couple of things that I've done and like our organization's been focusing on. So recently, in the last few years, we've done a lot of like water quality testing, which make sure like waterways are safer for community to use or yeah, to use for watering. We built a we built a walking path along our community to really encourage folks to stay active and be safe. But also, like with that project, we planted native trees to help with soaking up the water from rainstorms and things like that. So like stormwater management has been something that we've focused some of our projects on in the last few years. So we did that. We built a couple of riparian buffers. So a riparian buffer is basically a buffer between before water can get to a, you know, a body of water or a waterway or something like that. So like we built, a couple of riparian buffers. So a riparian buffer is basically a buffer between before water can get to a body of water or a waterway or something like that. So like we built, a couple of riparian buffers. So a riparian buffer is basically a buffer between a body of water or a waterway or something like that. So like we built a couple on our farm, and then we in other parts of the community, and we encourage folks in our community to like kind of incorporate that or build that on their own properties, because a lot of people, you know, grow stuff in their backyard. So we wanted to like educate them about that. So basically, we built a lot of, I mean, we planted a lot of like native plants, water-loving plants, to help soak up the water on their way from our farm to a little pond or a little waterway and things like that. So, and another issue that we have in our community is the Vietnamese community, like there's a lot of pavement on private properties, because so many people, so many homes are like multi-generational. I guess in Vietnamese culture, like, you know, everyone lives together, and so that means like houses have like a lot of people living in them. There's a lot of needs for cars and things like that, and so like so many people like pave their entirety of their front yards, and so that's an issue, because, you know, we have stormwater runoff, and that, you know, the more pavement you have, the less water that gets absorbed by the land, absorbed by the land, which means that more and more water needs to be pumped. And so, like, you know, our pumping system has, you know, has been kind of under fire for the last, well, forever. But yeah, I mean, that just makes it harder for the city to pump out water. So I would love to see, I actually did this at my own house, but I would love to see more people do more like their programs called like the Front Yard Initiative from Urban Conservancy, that really encourages you to replace concrete with like more permeable surfaces, more water-loving plants to kind of just do stormwater runoff mitigation. So that's something that like I would love to see more in our community. And I mean, a lot of it has to do with education as well. Like, you know, New Orleans East doesn't get as much rain flooding as the rest of the city, but I think like everybody, you know, we can play a part in terms of like how to make our homes a little bit more ready to be living with water. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think brought up a lot of great points there. Definitely an issue throughout the city, just concrete everywhere you go, and that can really help make a difference with our issues with flooding. If people do have questions, I'd love now if you guys do have questions to put them into the chat. I see Jackie said that she does, so I'm gonna let her go.
I just wanted to say thank you, Khai, for making time to do this talk. I joined a little bit later, right at your introduction, but I know I really appreciate your time and the wisdom you're offering and the way in which you're translating it. So to me, the work that VEGGI Co-op does is very practical and like out of need, right? It's oftentimes like when you talk about things like this, and like the genesis of both VAYLA and VEGGI Co-op has been really reactionary. But to me, what VEGGI Co-op and Earth Rising does is also this very ancestral and healing and also culture-bearing work. So I'm always really curious to hear, especially for someone like you who's been doing this as a marathon for quite some time, how you envision Vietnamese Americans and Asian Americans as our diaspora has shifted out of, you know, like moving through the city and moving away, right? And growing into these different professions. How can we encourage our younger generation and our generation to continue being a part of this work, right? Not just in dismantling all these things that we feel are oppressive, and including the gas plant and all of these things, but how can we create a space where we have a conversation for cultural shift, right? What needs to happen for us to anchor VEGGI Co-op's work in a place of like joy and liberation versus crisis?
Yeah.
Right? That's something I think about a lot. So it's like, how, like, you've been in this work for so long. So what keeps it joyful for you? And what keeps, you know, keeps you going?
Yeah, for sure. I think like, when VEGGI started, it was reactionary in terms of like you know, how do we help these folks that were affected so much by the oil spill and things like that. But at the same time, you know, when we started, a lot of people were interested in like, oh, it's a Vietnamese farmers cooperative. A lot of the restaurants we went to, there's a lot of the chefs that we talked to knew about, like, you know, how much the Vietnamese community loved growing food, and I did a really good job about doing it. So yeah, and that, I feel like there's a lot of pride in that as well. Like a lot of when they hear about VEGGI, they know that, you know, our farmers are like super diligent, they're super passionate, and they're committed to it. I would say, like, also, I feel like a lot of it has to do with, this is another part of your question, but a lot of getting like future generations or other folks involved is like, just one is like education. I think like a lot of people don't even realize, it doesn't have to be a young person. Like a lot of people in general don't realize, you know, where their food comes from. Like they see it at the grocery store and it's like, oh, it's magically, you know, a nice tomato or whatever. But you know, I think it would be really cool for more people to see, like, it's okay for food to have a little bit, you know, your radish to have some dirt on it because it's actually, you know, grew from the ground. And so yeah, so one is to actually get people educated about like the growing process and things like that. But I mean, I would say it's definitely difficult because like immigrant parents, Asian parents, they want their kids to go into like some kind of like STEM field or whatever, and a lot of like, because, you know, they went through so much to get their kids here, and like they want their kids to have like the best financial options and things like that as possible. So that's gonna be tough. But but we'd love to continue to work with young folks, get young folks out there to learn from our older farmers, and we do have, we used to have like a partnership with Kids Rethink New Orleans Schools. We had some students from there. They were growing food out on our farm, interacting a lot with our farmers, learning from our farmers. So that's something that, like, yeah, I think that was really valuable. And just continuing to get kids out there interacting with our older community members. The other thing that you mentioned was like, yeah, we don't want it to be reactionary anymore. We want to like celebrate it in a way. And I think that there's a lot of opportunity for that. I think a lot of, we've done a lot of like introducing like Vietnamese produce to some of these restaurants, and they've been really happy about like learning how to use some of the things that our farmers grow, and like they've really valued that. And at the same time, there's so much more culturally like more things that the Vietnamese community can bring to the table, I guess, culturally, food wise, and like I haven't really like figured out how to do this yet, but like I would love to see, you know, we have on Saturday mornings we have a very early morning. I mentioned we, but like at the Vietnamese community, VEGGI doesn't really have any, I guess, role in that. But there's a farmers market, and and it's been going on for over 40 years, and people bringing their produce and things like that, and like it's well known enough where you'll see like chefs from restaurants to go there. But also at these markets, you have like these people. We have people making tofu. We have community members making like dishes that you wouldn't really find in the restaurants, like snacks and things like that. And so like, I would love to you know, go beyond like what we have on our farm, and then like just like be able to like introduce some of the stuff that like I know that like this lady down the street, she can make and would be awesome at a farmer's market. Like people would really appreciate that. I want to you know, I think like there's definitely opportunities for our culture to be put out there, and veggie to be like kind of like, yeah, like you said, not reactionary, but be able to like celebrate the vast ways that our community can you know, I guess serve or bring to the forefront.
Awesome. Yeah, it's definitely one of like the most exciting things that VEGGI's doing is just bringing Vietnamese food and culture to the general New Orleans public. One of the other really interesting things, or one of the really beneficial things I think VEGGI does is they help with food access, especially in a city that we have such issues with like large areas of being food deserts. I was wondering what effects do you think like food deserts have in our communities, and like how can food access work uplift the communities that we live in?
Yeah, I think so. To me, like, so I guess I would say like I grew up in a food desert. Like I grew up on like canned foods and like a lot of like government food basically, and a lot of people in our community grew up like that, and like also like a lot of access to junk food from like convenience stores and that, and like not being able to like easily access like healthy food. I think a lot of it has to do with, you know, there's a lot of barriers, of course, but like it also goes to education and availability. You know, we want to make sure that people understand what healthy local food is, and we want to make sure that it's available. And so like I think actually like VAYLA helped us a lot in the last year. You know, we provided like local food to needy families through throughout the pandemic, and so like we want to make sure people understand that that's available. But yeah, like I guess like I'm trying to think. Education is one, but also it has to be available as well. You know, like we can say like, hey, instead of shopping for junk food, you should try to eat this and that. But like if it's not available, then that's a barrier as well. So I do see some organizations, farmers markets and things like that, like trying to make it more friendly for folks to be able to come and use, let's say, food stamps or whatever, or like they aren't able to shop or they aren't able to access as much maybe in their community, access healthy food as much in their community. But I've seen programming around that to focus on that. But yeah, just we have to figure out a way to make local healthy food a little bit more available for all communities. And I think that's something that I want to work on. VEGGI is already working on, actually. Like Tom and Maddie are doing a great job in terms of like there's mutual aid programs that we're working on. We do some occasionally donate some of our extra produce to community fridges and things like that. So yeah, we just want to make sure, you know, make sure people know about more healthy options, but at the same time, like we need to figure out like how to make it more available for everybody.
Yeah, I think that's definitely sounds like an exciting move for VEGGI going forward. Again, I want to just, if anyone has any more questions, the floor is definitely open to everybody. But if not, I just want to thank Khai again so much for his time and for all his insight that he's given. I really appreciate it. I feel like I've learned a lot, and I hope everyone here has as well. We will be announcing our next Sinews in the Cypress sometime soon. So stay tuned and keep following us on our social media and subscribe to our newsletter to keep up on what we're doing. We'll drop them or we'll send them in our follow-up email. But I just want to thank everyone so much for coming here and spending some of their afternoon with us. So thank you all so much. I really appreciated it. But,
all right, thank you guys.
Thank y'all.